Zoom allow everyone into the space first. But welcome, happy Monday. If you're on the East Coast, I hope you're staying warm. It's freezing out there. Okay, here comes everybody. All right, and we're also live on YouTube, so hello to everyone out in YouTube land. Thank you for joining us there as well. But I will go ahead and get started with the intro, and more people will come in as we keep going. But welcome everyone. My name is Brittany Kerfoot, the Director of Events for Politics and Prose Bookstore in Washington, D.C. And I'd like to welcome you all to tonight's virtual event. Before we start, I just have a couple of technical items to go over. So first, I will drop two different links. One is a link in the chat where you can purchase a copy of Kimberly Jones's book, How We Can Win. And Park Cannon is also an author and has a book, and I will drop that link as well. That will go straight to Politics and Prose's website, and we ship to anywhere in the United States. But if you're in DC and you want to stop by one of our stores to pick up your book, you can do that. Just select store pickup at checkout. Also, if you have a question for our speakers, please submit it in the Q&A space. And if you're on a laptop, that'll be the little Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We will get to those questions a little bit later, but you can submit a question at any point between now and the end of the event for a chance to hear it asked and answered on screen. Okay, now on to the actual program. Kimberly Jones is an activist and the current host of the well-read Black Girl Book Club's Atlanta chapter. Her new book, How We Can Win, Race, History, and Changing the Money Game That's Rigged, Jones delves into the impacts of systemic racism and reveals how her formative years in Chicago gave birth to a lifelong devotion to justice. She calls for Reconstruction 2.0, a multi-layered plan to reclaim economic and social restitutions. And most of all, she delivers strategies for how we can affect change as citizens and allies, while nurturing ourselves in the fight against a system that is in fact still rigged. Moderating the discussion is Park Cannon, Democratic State Representative for Georgia House District 58. In 2021, she was unlawfully arrested at the Georgia State Capitol for knocking on the governor's door while a voter suppression bill, SB 202, was signed into law. Cannon is a staunch supporter of all voters to ensure that they have access to the ballot, their votes counted, and to be able to pick their own elected officials, not the other way around. So please help me welcome these two amazing women to your screens. And Kimberly and Park, it's all yours.
Hey, Kimberly.
Hey, Park.
Oh my gosh, look at us. We got the hairpiece up. We got we in the chair at the wall. How are you today?
I am grand. How are you feeling today, Park?
Well, things are good. Today was Rayshard Brooks' 29th birthday. And even though he's not living, a group of us went out and, we're at the site that you've been at multiple times. And so, want to come to you for some grounding. Where are we at, today? Where are you at today?
Well, it's funny because I talk about Rayshard in the book, How We Can Win, and I talk about the impact of how inconvenience has become law and that is problematic and that we have to make the adjustments to that. Rayshard did exactly what we tell people to do. We tell people, if you've been drinking too much, if you feel unstable or anything like that, pull over to the side, get out of the way, do not be a detriment to someone else. And that's exactly what he did. He essentially did the right thing. He did what we asked people in his state to do. And through a ridiculous night, he ended up losing his life. And so it makes me call into question some of the laws that have been put on the books, not because they are associated with criminality, but because they are associated with inconvenience of what started out to be the planter class during Reconstruction, all the way up to now to the wealthier class, which still dictates the law based kind of solely on what irritates them, and that they have been able to weaponize that against the citizens. And then we find ourselves in really bad situations and lose the life of people who deserve to grow old, like Rayshard Brooks with his wife and kids.
It's a lot because, as we know, we were a part of the uprising that happened in June 2020 when his life was taken. And we had to even at that moment reclaim this conversation that the community coming out to say what the police did was not right. We're looking for what the answer to community policing looks like. That was reported in the media as looting and rioting. And so we said, no, this is the people's uprising. So I want to thank you, just in advance for all of the reclaiming that you do in general, the restating that you do for people, but also in this book, and to give you an opportunity to just let people know what was the process of you writing this book and how do you feel now that it's out there for folks to see?
It was a long process. It actually took me longer to write this book than was probably made my publisher happy, right? because I was still doing the work while I was writing it. So it's like, yeah, I should be writing today, but me and Park have to stand out in front of the Capitol in the rain to yell about SB, about 531 and SB 202 and all of these things. So I can't write today because I have to do the work today. And so it took me a while to get it done. But what I realized is that the conciseness and the impact of information that my speech had on people, this is the way people want to receive information now. And so I thought if I could take it and put it in a book and expand it, but keep the same clarity and the same straight to the point, no nonsense language that I've always used, it's going to be impactful for people. I've always been very open about the fact that I'm neurodivergent. I have ADHD, and the way that an ADHD brain works is we don't like fluff. We don't like a whole lot of filler. You know what I mean? Like we like for things to just be clear and as clean as possible. And so I always make a joke and say that my book is just really like a really glorified like TED Talk. Like if you took someone's TED Talk and put it in a book, this is that. But I had an amazing team around me that allowed me to research the book because I wanted to make sure that these thoughts, these ideas, and these things that I had studied before, that we got it as accurate as possible. I didn't want to leave a whole lot of space for people to say, oh, this piece is wrong. And now let me just like throw out everything that she said. And so I had an amazing research team that helped me over the process of writing this book. And basically just what I did was took the video and blew it out and say, okay, let's finally have a real conversation about the restitution that's owed to marginalized people in this country and why, because that's the conversation we're never having is why.
Ooh, the why. I always am trying to figure out the why. When I go outside to an event or getting ready for the day and things are stressful, things are conflated, what is my why for even going out? So I'm curious what your why was for writing the book, and also what you hope that it turns other people towards thinking about, or do you want them to start thinking of their why on reparations, on economics? How do we get people to their why?
I think the greatest way that we get people to their why is to nurture empathy in them, right? So this book, although I did write this book to give tools to African-American people, I wrote this book also largely with allies in mind, and people who are doing the work and people who want to join in this fight to do work, and people who may not even agree with me, who want an understanding as to what my why is, because my why was to nurture empathy. I learned that a great deal as a young adult author touring, because even my young adult books, although they're fiction, they are still social justice based. So I'm Not Dying With You Tonight is about two girls, one Black and one white, who survived the night in race riots. While We Fly is about two girls, one Black and one Jewish, who take a knee at a high school football game and the fallout from it. And so as Geely, my partner, and I, especially in 2019, pre being in this dystopian novel that is called The Pandemic, when Geely and I toured for I'm Not Dying With You Tonight in 2019, and we went to tons and tons of schools, we went to schools where the population is like 88% white in their town. And so here we are, this Black girl and this Jewish girl, having this conversation with them about social justice via this book. And it's interesting, the conversation we're having right now about CRT and about how it's making kids feel and all of that. Because what I learned when Geely and I would tour and utilize our book really as an introduction into these difficult conversations is that it didn't make the kids feel bad and made them feel empathy. it really did make them feel empathy for people that they didn't have a connection with otherwise. To read stories about people who have different lived experiences than them, but for their humanity to still be on the page, especially in Why We Fly, because we have queer characters and Jewish characters and all of these characters that are participants in the book. And so what I find when I'm talking to kids is that it nurtures empathy. It does the exact opposite of what people are trying to sell you on CRT. And another thing is, that's part of why I wrote this book, is because I realized we needed real CRT. We needed real critical race theory to help people to understand why we are owed the restitution that we are owed. Because the truth of the matter is, it's not just the miseducation of the Black child, it's the miseducation of the American child that has had a gross effect on this community. And the truth of the matter is, we don't even teach CRT in K through 12. The tenets of CRT are not even taught K through 12. They're taught at the college level, and they're barely taught there unless you're going into a major that warrants it. And so the propaganda ability to be able to convince people that we're fighting against something that doesn't even exist is hilarious to me. And all it has done is created a backdoor for them to eliminate the little bit of history about people of color that existed. And so my book is actually CRT, is what CRT is that it's the tenets of teaching how one community had an impact. And I focus in this book on the economic impact on another group of people.
I am living for it, y'all. We are on Instagram. There's 60 plus of us in this Zoom. We're on YouTube right now. I just want to give everyone an opportunity to go and to share this before we keep going deeper, because Kimberly Jones is going in right now on what we need to do and how we can win. I remember when I first became, I would say, politicized, I was in high school. So I thank you for caring about young learners and learners at all ages of life and putting books out there for all the different age groups. But I was not old enough to vote yet. I heard this slogan, yes, we can. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Literally, I made up a modern dance routine with my high school friends, and we performed it in front of the school. And that was our way of getting out the vote during President Obama's election as young Black people trying to figure out how we can win in a society. So I just love the affirmative title of the book. I'm curious how you got to the title and how long the book is. And if there are chapters, tell people the kind of the scope of the book if they're not looking at it.
Yeah, so we came to the title because my original speech that went viral was how can we win? And to me, like reflecting back on it, when you watch that video, like I'm crying, I'm tired. I run over to my friend, fall into her arms. Like I was just so beaten, battered, and bruised at that moment, which is why that speech probably came off so authentically, because I was like there was no edit button between my head and my mouth in that moment. And so I was expressing the frustration of the civil unrest of 2020 and of the 400-year impact on marginalized Black, Brown, and Indigenous people in this nation. And so when I reflect back on it, it was appropriate for the time. It was very appropriate for the time. But what I wanted to do with the book was to be more hopeful. And I wanted to switch the words around. Instead of how can we win, which is a question coming from a place of desperation and defeat and hopelessness, and change the title to how we can win, and to give people that hope, just like what you were describing with the yes, we can. Because first of all, if people ask me anything, instead of trying to figure out how to get rid of CRT, let's not focus on that. And let's try to figure out how to get civics taught properly in school. Because if you understand how civics actually work, it causes you to gain hope, because you understand how to utilize the system to the benefit of getting done the work that it is that you want to get done. And this narrative that we keep telling people, your vote doesn't matter. There's a reason why your vote matters. There's a reason why they're fighting so hard to take it, because of the fact that it matters, particularly at the local level, which is where we don't come out and vote enough. And I tell people all the time, right here in Atlanta, If you're standing on the corner of Moreland and Memorial, and you're standing on the Fulton County side, and you have a user's amount of marijuana, you're getting a $50 citation because it's decriminalized in Fulton County. If you walk 5 steps across the street into DeKalb, you're going to jail for the same user's amount. And so that's how impactful our local elections are and how important it is. And it's like, you need to understand how the MPU system works so that you don't allow developers to move into your community, join the MPU, run the MPU, and then institute systems that are going to run you out of your own neighborhood. You need to be utilizing your MPU to make sure that you are getting street sweepers, that you're getting trash receptacles, that you are getting the things that you need in your community. And so it was very important for me for this book to be hopeful and to say how we can win and to give people the language and verbiage that they need to be in the fight, but actually give them some real life tools to say, this is how you win. This is how you engage in civics. And don't worry about taking about the world. I may have an impact on the world, but Kim Jones doesn't worry about the world. Kim Jones worries about Georgia. What is happening in my state where I can reach out, touch people, take meetings, go to city council, talk to people about programming. I mean, you know this as a rep, Park, one of the largest parts of the job of the people who represent us is balancing budget. You have a right. Your vote gives you entree into having part of a conversation on where those funds are allocated. And yet we don't teach this to kids so that they can properly participate. And what I'm trying to tell people in this book is we can win. You just have to learn how to play the game.
Wow, that's what I'm talking about. Well, first of all, the game is rigged. So that's what the struggle is too. But you're right. As a state lawmaker, I spend a lot of time reminding people that my number one job is to go to the Capitol and to balance the state budget. We have $27 billion in Georgia's state budget that we can choose to use for education or for prisons, for healthcare or for crematory services. And so in a pandemic, in economic decline, in a state like Georgia, where we know politically there's not even representation of Black people in the majority party. They don't exist at the state level. Women barely exist at the state level in elected office. So the ideas that we have to put those into fruition for economic return, it gets difficult. But I want people to tell me, what kind of participatory budgeting do you want at your local level? We were able to get some participatory budgeting in the city of Atlanta. Now, it happened to be for like bike lanes and for pedestrian safety, which, yes, are issues that too impact our communities. In fact, a lot of times in our communities, it's like, where's the sidewalk at? How am I supposed to walk from this place to that place? If it's a food desert, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
We also want some of those more concrete policies that help people get through their day to day. I mean, I'm talking, if you don't have $10 and it costs $10, that's a lot of money if you don't have it. And so we want these programs to be pulling out. And I'm thankful that you're giving people tactics to say, okay, I might go to this budget meeting. I might not see anyone who looks like me or hear me out. They might not get what I'm saying, but I'm going to use this concise language in order to express, how we can win. And so let's get into it. Let's get into the dollar a little bit more.
Yeah.
Talking money in this book. You're talking these ideas about, cooperative economics and even bartering and trading. You're talking like getting folks to use their social impact, money so that we can cross that bridge and then it can be quantified. So tell us a little bit more about where did you come up with, these ideas, these schools of thought, the research that went into it. We want to hear some of that as well.
Yeah, so it's like, as I really started to do the research on the history, what I realized that economic impact was the center of all of these decisions. It was the impact, it was the center of all of these decisions. And so I had to exercise the emotional maturity to take the pain out of it from what I knew my ancestors endured and what I know even my current mutuals endured, to say, even when you look at something like slavery, it was an economic decision. When you look at Black codes and the 13th Amendment, it was an economic decision. When you look at what happened with the crack epidemic and the Kerry papers, those were all economic decisions. So I'm saying if the root, and I'm not talking about capitalism, and I'm not talking about wanting to become a great Black capitalist, and I think that's what's going to fix the problem. What I'm talking about is economic participation amongst marginalized people and how the inability to participate economically is affecting us in every lane in which we feel marginalized: medical, housing, education. All of it is impacted by economic decisions. And again, go back to what one of the government's top job is balancing of the budget. When you look at even corporations, the decisions that they make, the ones who have had to be sued because they dumped stuff in the water that gave people cancer. Those are economic decisions. And so I started to realize that if I get to the root of the economics and the inability to participate economically, then we'll start to deal with the problem. There's a famous line that 19 Keys says. He says, "Poor people vote and rich people lobby." And so, when you look at that, then, okay, how do we teach people how to do grassroots lobbying that allows them to make change in their community? When we look at these really bad voting bills, it was a group of citizens and businesses that got together and got this policy written. And then they went from state to state to state to state to find people at the state level who would sponsor those bills, adjusted the language based on the constitution of that state. We're not talking about a federal law that was changed that's going to have an impact on the federal election. We are talking about state and city level work that was done through group economics of these people who knew what it is that they wanted to do to affect change. And then we have known since Reaganomics that the trickle-down theory is not a real thing. Things coming from the top and trickling down does not work. So what does that mean? That means chances are really high that things working at the bottom and going their way up works. So if I decide that what I'm going to do is change voting laws at the state level and do it state to state to state to state to state to state. And then, so I'm going to get reps in all of those states that are going to become primary because I've done what I needed to do to gut the voting laws. Then that means when I'm trying to get the filibuster changed at the federal level, I have no support. I have no support at all. And this is all still rooted in economics, because the people who were able to do that pooled group economics from their state and then passed on what they did as a tool to their cronies in the next state. And so that's why I knew that this, like, really doing work and understanding economics and treating it as the root of the problem that it is, then I go back to wanting to be hopeful in this book. I can teach people economically how to do that for the betterment of the community. I can teach people how to make that change. I can teach people how to be as savvy as those grassroots who are coupled with big budget lobbyists do, and say, we can do the same thing. We got to stop looking at the top and saying, what's happening up there at the top? Like, no, what am I going to do in DeKalb County that then is going to go out to Georgia, that's then going to go out to the Southeast, that's then going to make its way to the White House?
That's what I'm talking about. And, as a young elected official, you stand shoulder to shoulder with me in so many spaces where I want to be really clear. I don't have all the answers. Mm-hmm. Neither do my colleagues. Communities have answers that have not been heard before or that have not been worked through before. So we give our power to the people. We believe in collective action. And we've seen, in fact, how we can be so powerful when we are together. So I want to give people who haven't had the chance to just click on that link to the video, your viral video. We put it in the chat. I'll add it to my Instagram later, y'all. But I want you to just tell people, what was going on at that time? What was the, economic, political situation? And what were you sharing in that video?
So it's interesting because that video came out of frustration of exactly what we've been talking about on this call tonight, is that I had tried to put together, just months before that, I had tried to put together a community cleanup in Bankhead off of Joseph E. Boone, right? And I had gotten some organizations to donate like trash bags, and the city brought out a dumpster. And I was like, we're going to clean up blocks and blocks and blocks, right? And like 3 or 4 people showed up. And we were able to maybe clean up 2 blocks with the 4 of us, but that's as far as we got. And so then when the civil unrest of 2020 happened here in Atlanta, and I had a friend, David Jones, who was doing a documentary about the civil unrest, and he asked me to come out and do some man on the street. And I was interviewing people. What I noticed was all of these upwardly mobile, middle-class Black people were downtown Atlanta cleaning up. They had paid for supplies out of their own pocket. They had gotten stuff to get the graffiti off the walls, and they were downstairs just doing like a massive cleanup. And as I interviewed each and every last one of them, I asked them why. I always ask why. Why were they here? What motivated them to come downtown and clean up? And every single one of them said almost the exact same thing, is that, I feel like the narrative is going in direction of the looting, and that's not important. And I also, and this is the part where I got irritated, they also kept saying, and I don't want people to think that we're all like that we're all like the looters. And it struck me. Ooh, that's that face right there, Park. That's the face I made. That's the vibe I had. And it struck me all the way the wrong way. And I thought that sometimes even those of us who are marginalized, even those of us who are allies, don't realize in the moments in which we are being agents of the white supremacist delusion. And so I was like, respectability politics. First of all, if I am bucking oppression, I do not have to buck oppression in a way that is, comfortable for my oppressor. That doesn't even make sense. And so I was really struck by that, and I started talking about it. And I found myself starting to go into my points. And David said, hang on. Let me grab my camera, because it was just me and him and my friend Brandy, who was with us talking. And he says, let me grab my camera. And he turned his camera on, and that little over 6-minute video is what everybody got. But it was rooted in the fact that I was really disturbed by the fact that these people activated out of fear of the white gaze. But I couldn't get anyone to be activated out of the motivation to clean up our community. And that just rubbed me the wrong way. And as you see, it just set me off. And that video is what came out.
Period. Well, they're going off in this Instagram live on my side, talking about, for example, the folks who you were talking about were probably in some ways more economically invested in the system. So they kind of start acting a certain type of way, and those are the concerns that I always have with being an elected official. Sometimes people will say, oh, Park, you're a politician now. How are you going to still, be a part of the People's Uprising? And I'm like, hold up, wait. I am an activist elected official.
Right.
Elected to do business. But first, I am always an activist. And so regardless of what table might need to be turned, what indirect or direct action may happen, I am okay seeing myself as a part of that, because I know that the issues that need to be in the center keep getting pushed to the margins because there's no representation and there's no visibility. So I love how in this book, you're talking economics and you're talking dollar and you're talking all of these important conversations, because as Black folks, sometimes it's just hard to realize that talking about money even have to mean talking about like coin and dollar. It's talking about a lot of the ways that people get funny or things change or all of a sudden circumstances are different. So let's talk about maybe your favorite part of the book, your favorite chapter, or just some quote that maybe you have in there that people are loving so that people can echo that back out tonight.
I think my favorite chapter, and interestingly enough, it's one of the favorite chapters of people who have read the book, is the 9 priorities of a balanced life, because I don't think people expected it, right? So it's like completely unexpected. They're like, she's writing this book about economics and the money game that's rigged and the history of marginalized people and all this critical race theory. And then she's got this whole chapter that's just about balancing your life and being a happy person and finding your center and all of that. And I say that because we need the best versions of ourselves doing this work. And that I find it frustrating that people either want to deitize activists, or if they don't want to deitize us and have this expectation that we're perfect all the time, they think that the only proof that we're valuable is if we're sad or dead. And so I'm like, no, I know myself and my friends like Park and people like that, we have a balanced life. We get out there and we do this work, but we still go to work and do our jobs. We still have families. We still have a dating life. We still go to dinner. We still like to have a cocktail every now and again to unwind. And so I wanted people to understand that the most revolutionary thing you can do is self-improvement. Just imagine how different the world would be if we all just woke up tomorrow and we're like, I'm going to be better. I don't know what's going on in the world, but me personally, this person right here, I'm going to be a better human. If literally everybody in the world did that tomorrow, the world would have drastic changes within 72 hours. And so I wanted to make sure that people understood the significance and how important it is for self-improvement and for having a balanced life and for keeping perspective, because that's what keeps people like me and Park and all of us from going off the rails, is that we do understand. Some of my favorite photos of Martin Luther King are the ones when he's like at the beach or when he's just holding one of his kids. And it's because we wanted to deitize him so much that we didn't want this young man, because he was a young man, to have a balanced life. And it's like, I refuse to be sad or dead. Y'all are not going to say that my relevance only comes if I'm murdered or if I'm just down and frustrated all the time. No, I have a very balanced life. I like hip hop. I like hoodies. I like cocoa. I like trips to the mountain. I like cute boys who are funny. I like all these different things. And it's like, and so that's the other thing I wanted people to realize, is that maybe the first thing you should do before you even enter this work is do some self-improvement, and to make sure your life is balanced, and to know that if you're looking at your community organizer list and it has 10 things on it and your relationships and your hobby section has nothing on it, you just need to make some adjustments, because once you balance your life, you're going to give your best self to this fight.
Oh my gosh, come on, balance this life. And I totally agree with you. I'm proud to be supporting a number of folks around us who have become authors in these past few years, who have written books. I put out a book this past year, and at the end of it, my whole thing is 120 days of affirmations.
Yeah.
And my affirmation, and write yours down. I don't care what day it is. I don't care if it took you 5 weeks to get from page 1 to page 2. Write these affirmations down, and let's try to figure out how we do this work, not how this work does us. And it's a challenge every day. The people in my personal life will tell you that it's difficult. So, I always want to bring space for you to talk about the work that you do on the ground. But I also know that you've had such an impact as an entertainment mogul over the years. You've run with the biggest of them. You're at Warner. And so how do you balance, as you are talking about, these different impacts that you've had, and maybe is it leveraging, and how can others kind of learn from that or glean from you?
Yeah, it's definitely leveraging, right? So it's like my relationships with people in entertainment is helpful when it comes to my social justice work. Part of why my video went viral is because of who posted it, because it was posted by people in the industry, some who knew me, some who didn't. A lot of the ones who didn't, they knew me because someone in the industry who knew me sent it to them and said, oh my God, have you seen this? You have to post it. You know what I mean? Eva here in Atlanta, Eva Marcel was one of the first people, to post it, because, I had been on the Ricky Smiley Morning Show before, and like, it kind of just grew from there. And so, even when we're talking about this impact work, I have some rich friends that I could call and say, hey, I need $1,000 for the skate park in Bankhead. Can you send that money over? And, the 9 tenets in that chapter that I break down are career, home, transportation, relationships, finances, health and beauty, hobby, education, and community. And what I tell people is that when I'm feeling imbalanced, I sit down and I write those 9 priorities out, and I put everything that I have going on in each section. And then I can visibly see where I'm overworking it. It's like, oh man, I have 12 things in community and 6 things in work, and I have nothing in hobby. Well, my hobby is travel. So I'm like, I haven't taken a trip in a year. I haven't taken a trip in 6 months. So then I know I immediately call my assistant. It's time for me to have a vacation. Even if it's something small, find 3 days where I can get away because I need to balance out. Or I'll see nothing has happened in family. I'm like, oh my God, nothing is happening in family. I'll call my assistant again and say, I need a trip to Detroit to spend time with my sister and her kids and her grandkids and to reconnect with family. Or I'm going to call my cousin who puts together the family Zooms, and we're going to do a family Zoom tomorrow because I've done nothing impactful in my family life, and I have 12 things in community and 8 things in work. And so even as I do my creative work, because like my first 3 books are fiction, and they're fun. I call them social justice adventures, but they still have social justice themes. They're just lighter, and they're for teenagers, and they enter into those conversations. And even with my deal with Warner, like I've had the ability to be around great people who pour things into me that even help and impact the work that I'm doing now. One of the first jobs that I worked was I was an intern for Dallas Austin. And like fast forward now, and I get to serve on the Georgia Entertainment Caucus was Dallas. And even though we're both, from the entertainment space, we're doing amazing things for the community. Like I get to be on the committee that does the Black Music and Entertainment Walk of Fame, a space where we honor African-American entertainers. And Park is also on that committee. And we laid our first medallions last year, and we're coming up this month in February, laying our next set of medallions. So it's all connected. And I have been blessed that there has been like this beautiful way in which it's all been connected. And I still get to have fun. I get to do fun things like go to the Image Awards and go to the Walk of Fame parties and do all this fun stuff. And I keep a balanced life, but I also build allies in those spaces that when it's time to do the gritty work, they're okay with sending a check to help us do the gritty work.
That's the leverage I'm talking about. I really feel that as an activist elected official, sometimes I'm playing the inside outside game, and both games matter. Mm-hmm. One is really, really rigged, and one is full of a lot of players and a team that I really care about, that has good connections, has been working hard, has been practicing, has been going up against teams that have just, absolutely changed the scoreboard. So I'm willing to be in the inside outside game. And I'm glad that you are too, Kimberly. I really respect the work that you do in all the areas, because at the end of the day, your voice, your core, your center, I truly believe that it does come from this balanced life that you work on and you help people to see. So tell us a little bit, this book, it's got like purple, it's got black, it's got some little pieces on the inside. But like, what do you love about the aesthetic of the book? I'm really glad that we serve so many communities, folks who read on paper, folks who listen to books, folks who get read to, folks who are textural. The book I wrote, it's like this like shiny plastic, and it's hot.
I love it.
So tell me about the aesthetics of your book.
Well, it's funny because at my publisher, like they sent me like samples of stuff and were like, what do you like? Like, what do you do? And like one of the first things that they noticed, just because they went down a rabbit hole researching me and stuff like that, they were like, she loves purple. Like she wears purple hair, she likes purple clothes, she puts purple on everything. So purple must be her favorite color. So all those first comps that they sent me, that's the one thing they made sure that purple was in that theme somewhere. And I was like, y'all got it right. Y'all okay. I see y'all paying attention. Okay. Because y'all know the girl, she likes purple. And so I just feel like, I've had some really cool covers with my fiction work with amazing characters and stuff on the cover, but I felt like this book, it's like, I just wanted to make it clear that just as concise and clean as that speech was going to be, that's what this book was going to be. And I felt like it warranted a cover that did the same thing. Like there's going to be this is a no fluff zone. We're going to just get to it. It really is a glorified TED Talk is what the book is. It is a blown out TED Talk. And, also because it's partially memoir, I was telling my friend the other day, I'm like, it's like social justice Forrest Gump. I'm like, so because it is partially memoir, I just wanted it to be cleanly me, and cleanly Kim is just purple. I just love purple. I like, oh my God, I wish you guys could see my desk right now. My scissors, my pen, my hole puncher.
Period. I'm telling Crayola, they need to get a Kim purple. Okay. It's a whole new shade of purple. Because look, I wore purple for you tonight. I was trying to figure out what to wear. I went to the thing. I looked on the rack. I was like, oh, no, hold on. I'm wearing purple. Okay. I got my nails purple. It's a light purple, Kim.
Yes.
Really see, but it's light purple. I'm really just so happy for you. I love that amidst these really dark times, because Kim, we've been in some really dark times these years, and even this past year, you've had family circumstances that have been deep. A mural will never hold the weight, of your family member, but we got to keep the work moving. And so I'm just glad that throughout, the midst of this, you've been able to put out another body of work that's going to live on. So where do people get this book? About how much do it cost? Like, how you promoting it? How do we just keep you glowing?
Yes. Well, it's a fairly inexpensive book. Most places you buy it, it's like, either around the $20 range or under that, especially because some people are running sales right now where it's under $20. You can get it everywhere fine books are sold, but obviously we want you to support Politics and Prose because they are hosting this amazing event for us tonight. And they definitely have dropped the link in the chat where you guys can order the books from them. As a matter of fact, I'm going to drop in the mail for Politics and Prose. So Brittany, remind me to get your address. I'm going to drop in the mail these book plates to Politics and Prose, so that the first, so 25 of you will actually have a signed copy, because these book plates I'm going to mail out tomorrow to Politics and Prose. And always support your local indie. So just click that link in the bio. You can get my book. They also have a link where you can get Park's book. And I would be remiss to get off this call, Park, without you telling them really briefly what your book is about.
That's super sweet of you. Tonight is about you. I'm going to say it in 3 pieces.
Tell them what that book is about.
I'm going to say it in 3 pieces. First of all, I talk about why, when I was 24 years old, I decided to run for office. Cut to the chase. It was because people asked me. It was because my community needed. And that's why I feel like a lot of folks should run right now, because people have been asking folks for money or for taking care of their kids or for helping them figure out their budget. That's the same thing elected officials do. So you should be considering running for office too. The second part is really just about, what does it take? How do you do this? Who do you need on your team? I talk about it as a kitchen cabinet because a girl is raised in the South. Okay. She loves her grits. She loves to eat. So we were talking about how can I break it down for people in a way that's like, okay, it's your kitchen cabinet. What spices do you have in there? You have your cinnamon. That's your media person, right? They have a high level update on your campaign. They go give too much. It's not going to be too sweet. They're going to give you the details though. What about your all season salt, your Lowry's, your whatever season salt you use? That's your volunteer coordinator. That's your campaign manager. They could do it all. Who's your pepper though? Who's your time though? So we talk about that. And then the last part is that affirmation series. Running for office is very challenging regardless, especially, when you have intersecting identities that you're willing to put on the table. And I put out a whole bunch of them as a queer person, someone who experienced homelessness, domestic violence, took access to abortion, all the things. you really start to realize that you need a guide sometimes. You need a little pathway. You need to write it down. You need a journal. So the book is a 3-part, book that just helps people through this, short and sweet thing. Realize that y'all can run for office too. And, Saturday was National Run for Office Day. So I'm still open to giving out some free copies. If y'all want a free copy, you just have to DM me. You just got to email me. You just got to get on my Twitter, on my Instagram, on Facebook. We'll get it to you. And so, yeah, Kimberly, thank you for the opportunity to plug. But
Yes.
we did get like a few questions in the chat, and I'm just gonna drop in here. I'm just gonna say, if someone is getting something that is a signed book plate from you, right? What does that really mean? Does that mean that you signed it or your assistant signed it or it's a sticker?
No, this means I signed it. You guys see, that's my signature. And it's like a little sticker. And so then when you get your book, you just peel the back off and stick it inside your book. So you have a signed book. Yeah.
And you have a signed copy, a signed book. And once you get those, y'all, we want y'all to post it out and to really interact with Kimberly's book, share it. Everyone's got free libraries on the block, on the corner these days. And so you could get an extra copy, put it in your free library, figure out if they'll let it go up in your child's school or your college university campus. How else are you promoting, Kim? Where else do you want to be seen?
These chats like this that I'm doing with Park tonight are like key and critical. My first book, I toured the nation. Like Gili and I had 2 national tours, but we got to get in front of people and you got to hug us. And that was pandemic. You got to hug us and get your book signed and really connect to people, which is really the way that I like to connect people. I like to be with the people, among them, be caught off guard by questions that are hard and still have to answer them and all of that. And so, with us living in the pandemic still, I have not been able to tour as much, but what I have been able to do is connect to people via these types of forums and lives and talks and things like that. And I really feel like it allows people not only to get to know the book, but to get to know me, and to understand what my purpose is. And, it's been a lot of fun. And most of these I've done, probably half of these I've done with people who really know me. I did this with Park. I also did one with my nephew, who you guys probably know him as Clovis from the Hulu series Woke. And he's my nephew, but we're only 9 years apart. So we grew up more like brother and sister than aunt and nephew. And so he was able to tell people terrible stories about how I used to like torture him when we were kids. But but overall, it's given people an entree, not just into the book, but into my life, which is important because, again, the book is part memoir. And so getting to know me and my why helps people to understand my work. And also, I am hoping inspires people to walk into doing their own work.
Period. Well, I have a whole recommendation list. I'm over here on Instagram Live. Samson McCormick is on here. He is hilarious. So I need someone to bring out these keys in this book. I need to see some drag queens with you going on for this.
Yes.
I need to see some preachers and some pastors, some queer folks. I need to see it all. And I'm really excited to be a part of it. Thank you for having me. The other 2 questions, you just kind of segued into it. You were like, sometimes I like to answer a little bit of a hard question.
Yes.
And figure out what I'm going to say. So the first one is, when we were in the beginning talking about reparations, as I was talking with a Harvard professor about, really is systemic. It's more, how does it come from and uproot all of what has been done? And there are estimates that say that it will cost $12 trillion to give reparations to everyone who's owed it. Mm-hmm. It's a starting figure in the United States. So who do you think owes reparations? Is it United States corporations? Are there other people that you've identified besides them who owe reparations?
Yeah, there are so many people who owe reparations. Good Lord. And I'm hoping that what they do is that they take this commentary to do the work. And if they are already doing the work, to continue to do the work. It's funny because I was laughing the other day because in the original video, I say, F your target. And you know, I meant that in the proverbial sense of like, that's not what we're concerned about right now. And Target's response to me saying that was to make my book While We Fly their book club pick of the month. You know what I mean? And so, you know what I mean? It's like, you have to be able to exercise the emotional maturity to say, you know what, our company has participated in these ills. And so now, how do we go about, you know, rectifying that by moving forward? And there are lots of companies. I call people out. I name some names in the book. I talk about Brooks Brothers and Bank of America and JP Morgan Chase. And a lot of these people, like, especially a lot of the banks actually held enslaved people as capital. A lot of Wachovia Bank, which, you know, is no longer in existence, but Wells Fargo has taken over them, JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, they held enslaved people as capital. They took enslaved people as collateral. And this is part of how they built their wealth. Brooks Brothers suits, you know, Hollywood shows you people standing on the sales blocks as they were being sold in tattered clothes, but that's, you know, that's for entertainment purposes. The truth of the matter is, it was that enslaved person was a product in your mind. And so when they put people on the slave blocks, they weren't in tattered clothes, they were in their best wear. You were selling a product. You wanted it to look good. And so who cut those original suits for not only enslaved people as they were being sold on a slave block, but also part of how you showcase your wealth, if you were of the wealthy planter caste, was how good your house slaves looked. Your coachmen, the people who served food, your doormen, you wanted them to look as refined as possible because it showcased your wealth. Well, who made those suits? Brooks Brothers. Brooks Brothers made their original money dressing enslaved people.
What?
Yes. And so they have to rectify with that. And I know that some of those companies that I've named have instituted programs and have even just as much as this year talked about the millions of dollars that they plan on spending and investing in Black communities. And I think that people should know about their participation, because then what people will understand once again is like, this ain't a handout. You're just trying to fix the ills of your roots. So
wow.
No, you're not doing us a favor, Bank of America, by investing in small business when you use Black people as collateral at some point.
Period. And we need to be able to name it and claim it and move forward. And that's how I feel, you know, as an activist elected official. Sometimes people are like, "Ooh, girl, you go up in these government meetings and you'll be like, wham, bam." But you come to Cohen, you be asking for the receipts, and you don't let people get off without accountability. So I always want to remind people, call into question the staff of your elected official. How diverse is it? You know, what communities are they really asking for input on? So you actually talked about in your book, hope, idea that like there is hope. One of your viewers wants to know that you're with them, or how do you feel about this, that possibly white folks aren't seeing the urgency of action that needs to happen right away, that there's so much that needs to change. Like, people are going through so much oppression. How do you focus on hope right now?
Yeah, I mix hope with hard truth, right? So my hope, when I'm offering people hopefulness, it is not coming from we're all just friends, I don't see color, let's just move on in hopes that we're going to be nice to each other. It's not coming from that. It's coming from, like you said, me smacking people in the face with the hard truth. Boom. And my hope is not delivered to them in a way that says, and to both allies and Black people and everybody, it's not delivered in a way that says, no, guys, everything could be cool, let's do these hard things. It's delivered in a way when it's like, guys, shit is fucked up, it's messed up. And so the hope is in, I have these strategies and I have seen these strategies be successful that can start unraveling some of this misery, which is why I tell people about the misery first. I'm like, look at all this misery. Isn't this gunk just gross and disgusting? Isn't your stomach turning from looking at this? Okay, you can be hopeless. And in being hopeless, this is going to grow. This is going to continue to get worse. this is going to become yuckier and it's going to drip with like toxic slime even more if you believe that you can't do something. My hope is in believing that you can do something, to look at this ball of book and grime and say, okay, this book and grime that I'm looking at right now is gentrification and how we are displacing African-American seniors. And then my hope is to say, okay, this board of NPUs has a developer that is running the NPU. Step one, let's gut him. Let's get him out of the conversation. Step two, let's go down and talk to our city council about some resolutions that we can do that will apply to seniors, or let's create a resolution that will apply to what we're going to call legacy residents, people who have lived in their home for 25 years, that's going to stabilize their taxes. Let's also implement some programming. Okay, we're having an issue with crime here. I hope the mayor listens to this. We have an issue with crime that is happening here in Atlanta. And the data shows that 60% of that crime is happening for people between the ages of 13 and 24. Okay, let's create some paid internships for these kids that are going to allow them to make a decent living of $15 an hour. And then allowing them to make $15 an hour, they will be less likely to participate in crime. Okay, what jobs are we going to participate with them? Okay, we're going to create a program called Senior Help. And what we're going to do is these seniors over here who are getting fines because they no longer have the loose income or physicality to do their yard work, these kids are going to now do that yard work. And we're going to pay them through this program $15 an hour to come do this yard work for these seniors whose homes we are changing. That's what the hopefulness looks like. It doesn't look like me telling people that they're okay. It looks like me telling people that things suck. But I got a plan that can work, that we can do to start to fix it.
I love it. Inspiring work, Kimberly Latrice Jones. So the metaphor, last question. The metaphor about monopoly went viral. That's what you talk about. You're talking about, what if you're playing Monopoly for all these rounds, 400 rounds, you don't get no money, you don't get no property, you don't get to barely even have a turn. In fact, you might only get put into jail.
Yeah.
So you talk about, if we end up throwing out Monopoly, how can we level the playing field going forward? What would the single thing that you would like to see happen or to have done, if you can boil it down, as we level this playing field?
I would say the first thing that we would need to do in order to create the generational wealth that's going to combat a system that was meant to oppress not only marginalized people in the sense of people of color, but also just poor people in general, that the laws that were created by the wealthy all the way back when, and who still are creating those laws, have utilized oppression via economics, is that the first thing that we do to start to combat that is creating a road to home ownership for those people. There's a reason why we have kept poor people from home ownership, and understanding the impact and the generational wealth building that is connected to that. I talk about this in the book. Between 1925 and 1965, the US government underwrote $200 billion in home lending, and 98% of that went to white America. 2% went to all the rest of us. I'm talking Latinx, Black, Asian, Jewish. 2% went to all of us. There was actually, during that period when that home lending went out, it was actually legal to put in a mortgage that the home could not be resold to a person of color or a Jewish person. I actually have copies. I wish I was at my house. I would show it. I actually have copies of mortgages that have that language in there. So what does that tell you? The suburban middle class was built via the government, and minority people were kept out intentionally being via the government because they understood the importance of home ownership, which is why those programs that was 98% given to white America, the contrast of what we got in marginalized community was the housing authority that created projects. And that was a system that was set up to separate families, because you couldn't be a whole unit of a family and participate in those programs. You had to be a single parent to participate in those programs at the onset of those programs. And so it's like, when you talk about all of the sin points, one that I know that could help to start unravel this system is home ownership. And I know people always ask me, why is this big connection to money? Here's why there's this big connection to money. If I am a poor person who's making minimum wage, and I can't afford, and there is no transportation coming into my community, so all I can afford is the car, and I can't afford the insurance, and I can't afford the registration, and then my neighborhood is over-policed as I'm coming home from working one of my 2 jobs with no registration and no insurance, and then I'm pulled over because cops are strategically set throughout my community on the weekend and are getting tickets that are helping with budgets for the city. And I get a ticket that I can't afford to pay for. I go into the probation system. An economic decision gets treated with criminality. And then if I can't afford to keep up with the probation, or I got to work my job and I miss these things and all of that, there's a warrant for my arrest. And then I will, again, like the original tenant of the 13th Amendment, go into jail to serve that time, and I will become a slave by another name. And it's due to the fact of my poverty, not because I'm criminal, but because I'm impoverished. And so we have to give people a road to not allowing poverty to demonize them.
Thank you. I am so honored to have been on this conversation with you tonight. Thank you for all of the emotional labor as well as the author labor that put in to how we can win. I want to thank Politics and Prose Bookstore out of Washington, D.C. for having us tonight, and kick it over to them to close out.
I can't even follow that up. Honestly, there's nothing I can say. I have goosebumps, and I just want to thank you so much, Kimberly, for just sharing yourself with us, and Park for being here. I can't follow that. So just buy the book. Just buy the book, give it to your friends, give it to your parents. Like Park said, put it in a little library, donate it to a public library. Watch the video that I put in the chat. That's how you can start. Somebody in YouTube asked, how can I start? And like, that's it. It's buying the book and learning and taking your advice. So thank you so much, both of you, for taking the time out. This is so important, and it means so much to have you guys here at PMP. And that's all I can say.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. Thank everyone for being here, and stay well and safe and stay well read. And we'll see you at the next one.